streets and lined with dirt. There's a man who inspires millions to live like they are free. He's a guerrilla in the greatest sense, a revolutionary. And he took up arms in '84 to fight the Turkish state and protect the Kurdish people from another deadly fate. Some may call him a terrorist, but you know it's not that way. And when politicians didn't care, he formed the PKK. Attacks against the state for their years of persecution and their policies of hate. On a mission for the freedom of the people of his land. He's the life and blood and heart and soul of all of Kurdistan. He liberated women, helped them shed religion's chains, built a path for every person from the cradle to the grave. An intellect and passion like the world has rarely seen. He's a leader without privilege, and I think that we should breathe.
Very excited, very happy about how this Congress has gone so far. We've had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of curiosity, and a lot of solidarity. We had first an action after the first evening, where all members, all leaders of the Trade Union Congress were holding the picture of Abdullah Öcalan, the painting by Jim Fitzpatrick, which you see behind me. As well as earlier today, there was a fringe meeting held to talk about the situation of Abdullah Öcalan, the imprisonment of Abdullah Öcalan on Imralı Island, as well as the broader situation in Turkey, with reports from members of the latest Imralı Peace Delegation, International Peace Delegation to Imralı from February of this year. Now, it's very important that we establish ties with the trade unions. This trade union campaign is so significant because there's such a strong history of trade union solidarity with leaders and movements from across the world, in particular the Nelson Mandela campaign that took place a number of decades ago, which a number of people have begun to draw parallels between Nelson Mandela and Abdullah Öcalan. Why this is important, the Kurdish freedom movement, one of the most fundamental aspects is bringing people together, bringing people in dialogue, and forming united struggles and resistance against the enemies that we all face, against the global system that oppresses us all. And there is a very strong history of resistance and struggle of peoples of all kinds within the United Kingdom, within the British Isles. And it is important that we bring this movement, bring the Kurdish freedom movement and the paradigm articulated by Abdullah Öcalan into dialogue with these struggles.
Well, my name is Christine Blower. I'm now with the NEU, formerly of the National Union of Teachers, the NUT, and I'm the co-chair of the Freedom for Öcalan campaign. The campaign was launched by Unite and the GMB, but a number of unions, including my own, have had policy on the Kurds for a very long time. And one of the reasons why the campaign is focused particularly on Abdullah Öcalan is because he is the recognized leader of the Kurds. And not only that, but his imprisonment for 20 years, it's clearly a political imprisonment. And his freedom is linked to the freedom of the whole of the Kurdish people. And the Kurdish people's freedom is linked to our freedom. The thing about Öcalan is he is a global thinker. He's capable of looking at things from the isolation and imprisonment of Imralı Island for the past 20 years and yet seeing a clear way forward, a roadmap to peace, a pathway of leading not just the Kurds but everyone into a society and a way of being and functioning and living, which means that we will have social justice and equality. For me, his focus on women's liberation is quite critical. You know, those of us who think that we're well-ordered societies where we care about social justice, we don't have equality for women. But actually, where Kurds have been allowed to organise, they have been able to organise in a way that promotes that kind of liberation for women. So from lots of different perspectives, it's really important for me that the trade union movement in Britain stands with Öcalan, stands with the Freedom for Öcalan campaign, affiliates to the campaign, and actually makes sure that we from Britain are doing everything that we can to call for and fight for and struggle for his freedom.
TUC, Unite the Union and many trade unions in the UK are supporting the campaign because Öcalan is being treated in such a way that affronts any humane behaviour, and I believe he is, as being said, the Mandela of the Middle East.
What we've seen in Turkey is that since Erdogan has come to power, we've seen the lurch to the right of Turkish politics, and we've seen under Erdogan's regime that it's got worse and worse for the Kurdish people, and the Kurdish people themselves see Abdullah Öcalan as their leader. And as trade unions and trade unionists, 3 years ago we said that we have two choices. One is that when it ain't our business, Gov, and it's over there in Turkey, it doesn't affect us and therefore it's not our fight, or we do something different. We say it is our fight, and the Kurdish people need our solidarity, our support, our resources, and for us to stand shoulder to shoulder with them and fight. And that's why, and that's when, in 2016, Unite and the GMB actually launched the Freedom for Öcalan campaign.
I'm Shavana Taj. I'm the Vice President of the Wales TUC and the National Officer for PCS Union for the Wales and South West. This campaign, I think, is quite straightforward. It's a campaign about freedom. It's about a campaign about equality and justice and the liberation of Kurdish people. Ultimately, what people are asking for is nothing that we as citizens of the UK already enjoy. That's what this campaign is about. And the reason why it's so important for the trade union movement to continue to show its solidarity in the way that we've demonstrated over the last few days is that this campaign was not purely just about getting the visit to Abdullah to make sure that everything is okay in prison, but this is about freeing him and freeing the people of Kurdistan as well, and for people to have liberation ultimately. And for trade unionists, it is really, really important that they affiliate to the campaign, but they also ask Kurdish people who are active in the movement to come to their campaigns as well, and to come to their branch meetings to talk about the issues as well. And as some of the speakers today have been talking about as well, this is particularly important for women of all backgrounds, because the offering from Abdullah is for everybody. It is not just for one person.
That delegation we produced this excellent report which gave a detail of what we found there, and also get campaigning behind the Freedom for Öcalan campaign to make sure we get as many trade unions and trade union branches involved in the campaign. And there's also other trade unionists. My comrade Tom Murphy has been to Turkey to observe what is going on, and I'm sure that the work that all the unions are doing is, and I know is being very well received in Turkey and Kurdistan. But I've seen at first hand the repression that the Kurdish people have been under for a number of years, and the righteousness of winning the cause for freedom for Öcalan.
So I'm Paul Scurley. I'm from Moorish Solicitors. I was privileged to attend with the delegation to Turkey, organised by the Freedom for Öcalan campaign in February 2019. An international set of delegates, including trade unionists, politicians and former politicians, lawyers, and the actor Maxime Peake, together attended in Ankara and in Diyarbakir, where we met with a host of lawyers, trade unionists and humanitarian groups. I can't stress enough how important it is that this campaign should be developed, encouraged and supported. There's an issue here for the whole of Turkey where the rule of law is jeopardised in a real and frankly terrifying way. But for the Kurds in particular, who represent tens of millions of people spread between the four countries that formerly were Kurdistan, for them the way forward politically has to be behind their leader Öcalan, and until he is released and a political dialogue with him is undertaken by the Turkish state, then the Kurds can't get the representation that they need.
I'm Stephen Smiley. I'm from Unison, the public sector union. At yesterday's conference, we had an action to represent our solidarity with the Kurdish people, and specifically for Abdullah Öcalan. The hundreds of delegates there were proud to hold up the placards proclaiming freedom for Öcalan as a message to the world that the trade union movement in this country is full square behind that struggle for Kurdish freedom and democracy that Öcalan represents.
So colleagues, the situation that faces the trade unions and that faces the Kurds in Turkey are intrinsically linked. Erdogan is attacking all progressive forces in the country. The war on the Kurds has extended to a war on all who oppose him and who stand up for human and worker rights in the country. We cannot campaign for the human rights of the Kurds without too campaigning for the rights of trade unions and free civil society in the country and vice versa. Through being a member of the executive of the night, I've been privileged to meet many from the campaign for Öcalan's freedom and to end the war Turkey wages against them. And I have met some of the bravest trade unionists and HDP politicians. They all want a secular society in Turkey with human and worker rights, equality, freedom and a democracy. We must support them in their struggle. I urge you all here to affiliate your branches and regions to the Freedom for Öcalan campaign.
I am Geoffrey Shears. I am a trade union lawyer. I am also treasurer of the Institute of Employment Rights, and I am the vice chair of the Centre for Labour and Social Studies. I therefore take a direct interest in the struggle of trade unions for a better world in this country, in other countries, in Cuba, in Latin America generally, and in any country where trade unions are organizing for a better life. The Freedom for Öcalan campaign was started in this country by the trade union movement. It was the best place to start. The trade unions are concerned with justice, justice for Öcalan. But justice will lead to a negotiation that can bring peace, peace in the region. Öcalan can deliver the team that can negotiate peace in the region, and peace in this region is vital for peace in the world. It is high time that the people who were engaged in these struggles at the front line are the people who can resolve them. And those who are pulling the strings behind the scenes internationally for their own self-interest, for their own power and wealth, should be shown up for what they are. They should be seen to be warmongers who are causing strife and trouble and ultimately damaging the interests of real, ordinary people. This campaign is a small part of a big process, and I wish it every success.
Having been part of this movement and campaign from the start, I tell you what, yesterday was fantastic, and thanks to everybody that took part in that action in the hall. It's not easy to break through the taboo of talking about Öcalan, talking about the Kurds. We know what the legal situation is, and by Christ did we take a huge step forward yesterday. The way this meeting is packed out, or was packed out earlier until people drifted off, the way that, and the level of speakers, the level of engagement, the level of endorsement is an absolute pleasure. I woke up with a smile on my face for the first time since the Brexit referendum. That was purely as a result of what happened in the hall yesterday, and the energy and the inspiration that this is providing now.
My name's Louise Regan. I'm one of the national officers from the National Education Union, and my union has had a long commitment to supporting the people of Turkey and the Kurdish community. We're affiliated to this campaign. I think it's really, having listened today to people, it's really important to understand what is happening for people in Turkey. I know from my work with trade unionists there that lots of educators have been arrested, have been imprisoned. I know that's the same for particularly journalists. Actually, I think in Turkey now there are the greatest number of journalists in prison, and we as an international community have to stand in solidarity with those people, and we are only going to change the situation there by speaking out, by educating people about what is happening, and by going out there on delegations. And in some ways that's why I asked the question about the TUC delegation, because because I think given the situation at the moment, it's even more critical that we are seen to be actively going out there, talking to people, showing our solidarity, but coming back here, engaging with our politicians and getting them to put pressure on the leadership in Turkey to change the situation.
No respect for any kind of laws, because when we were there as a delegation, all we were asking the Turkish state to do was to implement its own laws. We weren't asking for anything beyond that. We were saying that they said that every prisoner should have access to the lawyers. So we said, let Erdogan and his Minister of Justice make sure that Öcalan has access to his lawyers. And they wouldn't respond to that. We went further than that because they have quite a law, at least the Constitution is written in a nice way, where in theory people should have lots of protections, but none of them are being used. They're being completely disregarded. And if you have got a country where there is no rule of law, it then becomes very difficult for anybody to operate in any legal way. Very, very difficult to operate within legality when there are no laws, and those laws that are there are not being implemented. And this is the problem. And of course, that's a problem for everyone in Turkey, anyone with any progressive ideas, but of course, the repression of the Kurds within Turkey precedes the latest coup. So they are the people that are going to be the worst treated as a result of that. And it's very clear to me that there is no functioning democracy in Turkey. You know, that there is, at the end of the day, there has to be a political solution to the problem within Turkey and the way it treats its minority Kurdish population. There has to be a political solution. The only way to resolve these issues is through politics. It's through sitting around the table and finding an accommodation. You know, Öcalan is seeking an agreement, a political agreement, that gives them a level of self-rule within the Kurdish parts of Turkey. This is not a huge ask, but clearly Erdogan is unwilling, absolutely unwilling, to move in that direction. I'm going to finish on this point. I'm going to finish, I suppose, on the point that you made about Öcalan now having become our Mandela, our new Mandela. Like Mandela, he is in a prison island. Like Mandela, he will be released because he has been unjustly jailed. And like Mandela, he will lead his people